You will look at the eastern sky, you will look at the sun, you'll tap yourself on the head, and the sun will wink. And all through your life, you've grown up to believe that to be true. There are all sorts of traditions. Hey, look, if I go up and I simply touch a baby's cheek, it'll be blessed, you know. And all these things that are culturally biased, and all sorts of, different types of beliefs that we believe in because simply we believe it to be true. Whether it's from the family, whether it's from your friends, you believe it because we believe it to be true without, again, putting any type of validation on it. I'm quite sure you probably think of all sorts of examples. How about this? It's true because I want it to be true. And then this is where we're really going up to the point to where, hey, look, I believe it to be true because it's in my vested interest to believe it to be true. How many times this? Here, let me give you a great example. This gentleman right here. What's your name, sir? How you doing? He's running for office. And he comes up to me and says, Steve, dude, buddy, how you doing? Hey, look, I really need your help. If I get to be the mayor of Harlingen, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. Really? Hey, that's really sounding great. Let me help you. What's happening here? I want to believe everything that he says to be true because it's in my vested interest. I can help him, he'll help me. Anything that he says and does, wow, that's really great. I think that's really funny, right? You don't think, hey, you're blowing smoke, Mr. Schmoniak. Anybody remember back in history a gentleman by the name of Jim Jones? Ah, a couple of people. Anybody else over here? Okay. No, ladies? Jim Jones. Jim Jones, California. Jim Jones was a so-called preacher and minister. And believe it or not, what's that?
The Kool-Aid guy.
Yep. Well, what had happened is that he talked, well, let's see, I think it was about 7,000 people. No, I'm sorry, 700 people. About 700 people to say, give up your lives, give up all that you have, and we're talking, not like a couple of $1,000s, people that had millions of dollars. Give it all up and come live with me. He took his flock, went down to British Guiana, I think it was, or the Honduras, okay, and began a cultural sect down there. And we're talking about people that had bachelor's, master's, doctorate degrees, and left everything for the life. One day, Jim Jones gets up there and he talks to them, and there's a vat of Kool-Aid and says the world has now come to a point to where we need to go ahead and go on to the next life. And believe it to a point, husbands, wives, adults, children lined up, took a cup of Kool-Aid that was basically sat there and had cyanide in it, and it was a mass suicide. They all died. Now, you can't tell me that when someone starts talking to you with conviction, and if you let your mind to be simply, don't have any type of way to sit there and start asking questions, what do we start to do? We start to believe it because sometimes it's in our vested interest. I mean, you've had a rough time, a rough life, and someone comes up and says, hey, I can give you the greatest thing in your life. Just follow me. And wow, it sounds really nice because it's in my vested interest. I want it. Oh gosh, if I do this, I can get a grade of an A. If I do that, it's in my vested interest. And you believe it without putting any type of judgment to it. So, as the old saying goes, never drink the Kool-Aid. All right? It's true because it's in my vested interest. It's true because I have always believed it to be true. We keep growing up and we've been told that if you do this and do that, then it's true and it will happen. And we never get to a point of actually seeing, hey, can we really test it to see if it's actually true? And we grow up all our lives believing something or having a belief and never actually testing it because we always believed it to be true. So, what happens here? Well, you got to remember this, is without any type of universal intellectual standards to guard our thinking, is that our mind becomes unclear. It becomes fuzzy. It is like a long, broad highway of information and beliefs coming in, and there's no red light to stop it and say, whoa, what do you mean by that? So, let's talk about some of these standards. And the first one is what we call as clarity. Oh, one other point. Let's really see where our honesty hits the roads. Would you be willing to sit here right now, and I'll bring you in one at a time, and if I ask you right now, hey, do you think your thinking is really clear? Would you really honestly say, well, I think it's really kind of fuzzy sometimes on these issues or that issues. Do we ever really honestly say that, hey, look, my thinking and the way that I approach thinking is fuzzy or unclear? Oh, God, no. We never do that, right? I mean, I'm always a great thinker. Yeah, okay. All right. So let's talk about the different critical thinking standards. If you look in your little handout right here, you'll see a triangle, and you'll see the critical thinking standards. So let's talk about each one of them. First of all, let's talk about clarity. Clarity is what we call as a gatekeeper standard for critical thinking standards. Okay? And it's really interesting because it goes a long way. Because when we think to do what? We communicate, right? We're communicating things. We're being able to talk to people. We're thinking to learn. We're thinking to explain. So, you know, as the old saying goes, say what you mean what you say. Miss, could you look at her right now? Could you give her directions very quickly on where you live? She wants to drive to your house to study. Can you give her directions? Go ahead.
I live across the street.
Okay. Now it's funny, just right there, and she's blushing already. Okay. I live across the street, right there. But it's really interesting because, again, too, is that, well, what do you mean by over there? Across the street. Which street? See what I mean is sometimes about that? I'm not trying to make it. It's about clarity. You know, we need to be clear on what we say and what we communicate. And something as simple as what we're communicating right now. Everyone thinks they're a great communicator, but if we're not clear, it doesn't work. Here, I'll give you the greatest example, and you can't tell me it doesn't happen. How many times is me as an instructor or a professor gets up there and says, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we finished with this chapter. What I need for you to do is I want you to go ahead and do this assignment. It will need 3 references, it will need this, it will need that, and you're all sitting there like this. Okay. And then all of a sudden we'll be at the end. Are there any questions? And of course everyone's like this. Nope. And 5 minutes as soon as you walk out that door, what happens? It is the typical, I will bet $200. Hey, do you know what he wants? What did he say? Did you take some notes? Did you do this? Well, again, too, is if it was unclear to you, and it's communications, can you imagine if I'm writing something? If I'm doing something? I had the greatest fun when I was teaching principles of management. I had this one assignment. You ready for this? This is talking about clarity in instructions. In my management class, I had you write to see if you could actually communicate. Is that his name was Glob. Glob came down from Mars, and he's really hungry. He's giving a presentation at your company tomorrow. And all that you have is a loaf of bread, peanut butter, okay, and a knife. And I want you to explain and give directions over to Glob how to fix a peanut butter sandwich. Oh my God. Just for something like that, you had all sorts of wild and crazy things. Why? It's because we are unclear on the way that we communicate. We are unclear on how we give directions. We are unclear on a lot of different things. And the thing about it is if we're unclear, then how are we actually going to be able to think and actually discern something? Wouldn't it be really great if we take a look at our politicians, and if our politicians could simply be clear? I think no one would get elected, would they? All right? So, we need to be clear. And a lot of times people think that we're just great concrete thinkers. Oh, Mr. Shimoniak, I'm a great thinker. I'm very clear in my thinking. Well, then if it's unclear, a lot of times when people are talking to you and you're looking at them, how can we actually pose some type of standards to see if it's really clear? You know, you can ask them 3 questions. You can say, you know what? I'm unclear on that.